Welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. When you're ready to transform your sales for today's transforming market, we've got you covered with your host, the queen of cold calling and founder of Salesology, award-winning author, speaker, sales trainer, and coach, Wendy Weiss.
Hi, welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. And I'm your host, Wendy Weiss. I am the founder of Salesology and the Salesology Prospecting Method. I'm also known as the Queen of Cold Calling. And today, our very special guest is Greg Brooks. He is the Chief Growth Officer of Rocket Station. And he is also a partner in Rocket Station. He oversees everything in business development and marketing. He joined the Rocket Station team with a background in sales and entrepreneurship, both in the public and private sectors. He's led teams in many industries, including sponsorship, fundraising, consumer packaged goods, military resale, and hospitality. On top of this, he's worked with some of the top Fortune 500 companies, as well as having started and sold multiple companies of his own. So welcome, Greg.
Hey, Wendy, thanks so much for having us. Anybody who refers themselves as the queen of cold calling, I've got to have a conversation, whether it's a podcast or a cup of coffee. So I'm excited to dive in here with you.
Well, thank you. And I am excited that you are here as well. And so I want to know the backstory. I have your official bio here, but I want to know the backstory. How did you get to Rocket Station? How did you become the Chief Growth Officer? What's this about? All the different things that you've done and having started and sold multiple companies. Share everything.
I know I was almost timing you as we were reading that. That's kind of become like a Frankenstein intro. I'm like, we got to cut some stuff out of that, but it is all true. I mean, what I can say, Wendy, is I've kind of been a career entrepreneur right from getting out of college and kind of jumping into the workforce. I was kind of your typical, college grad. I was fortunate enough to play soccer collegiately. It led to an opportunity to take on a graduate assistantship within our athletic department, got my MBA paid for, which was great. Coming out of college with no student debt is nice, but was very much the typical stat of I had 7 different jobs in 9 years, just kind of trying to find myself and find my space, making that transition into the working world. And I quickly realized that, I like to take on challenges myself and I love the sales aspect of growing businesses. So how I've really done, as the bio said, really anything from selling consumer packaged goods for some of the largest brands, some Fortune 500 companies in the country, to then coming in touch with Rocket Station, which the first job I had out of college, one of my good buddies in the office that we developed a relationship over the 9 months that we were both there is actually our current COO here, Mark Nickel. So it was very much a LinkedIn connection. It was, 10, 12 years after we had first met each other, we both somehow ended up in Dallas when we had met in different parts of the world and just kind of, hey man, how are you? Let's catch up. And he had just joined his brother, who is our founder and CEO, with this new venture, Rocket Station. And I guess how he likes to describe it is they were looking for a fast talking salesperson. So I guess I fit the bill, and fast forward now almost 4.5 years and say surviving COVID and growing the business. We now sit here and we're fortunate to say we've got a business that provides incredible jobs and opportunity to almost 2,300 team members overseas in the Philippines, which we're very proud of.
That's very cool. And so I'm looking, as we're speaking, I'm looking at a logo of Rocket Station behind you, and then it says virtual staffing. So tell us a little bit about what Rocket Station does.
Definitely. So we're the number one virtual staffing provider to the real estate industry. So we specialize, and we were talking kind of before we hopped on here, in the commercial as well as the residential space. Our business is broken up into really four main lines. That's property management, both on the commercial and residential side. That's the investor side. We have a brokerage as well as real estate agent side. And then we also work with home service companies. So anything from plumbers to general contractors to HVAC companies, we help them staff and build a process-driven back office to either complement existing team members or build out entire departments that they otherwise, would find difficulty in finding the resources, the budget to be able to do so. So we, it all started. So one of my partners, Rob, he was a real estate investor here in Dallas, and he started leveraging virtual assistants. This was 9-10 years ago in his personal investing business. And as I'm sure you know, both the commercial as well as investing space, it's very networky. And as this term virtual assistant was becoming more mainstream, as more people were looking to websites, Upwork, which I'm sure some of your listeners have heard, had just gone public. So big major news. People were finding, freelancers or virtual assistants to kind of plug in and offset some of that admin work that, whether you're a salesperson or an operations person or an accountant, would bog them down every day. And say Rob's genius was he saw a real gap, because for a lot of us, we know we do a lot every single day, right? Whether we're a part of a large company or we're a self-starter entrepreneur, there's a lot of buttons we got to press, a lot of things we got to get done. And we know that we need help, but a lot of people struggle in figuring out, well, how would I hire somebody to help me do that, right? A lot of us try to hire people based on their resume and their experience, which what that means is, I want you to come in here and I don't want to have to train you, and I want you just to figure it out, which, can put us on that hamster wheel of never having good hires and just thinking we've got to do everything. So we kind of flipped the hiring paradigm on its head and started to develop a system where we would help our clients develop really steadfast processes within their company, document it for them, and then leverage our team members in the Philippines to recruit, train, and onboard, incredible talent that they could plug into their business, just like somebody sitting there locally in their office.
So I'm curious. I know that before the COVID pandemic, when I would talk to clients and talk about a VA, virtual assistant, lots of times I was met with confusion, like nobody knew what that meant, or why they should think about hiring a virtual assistant. And but then COVID hit and everybody started working virtually. And so now some people are back in the office, but a lot of people aren't back in the office. So I don't think it's as confusing as perhaps it was before the COVID pandemic hit. So I'm curious if you have seen, what changes have you seen before and after COVID?
Yeah, I think the term has been more normalized, right? And I'll kind of get to the backstory as to why our company's Rocket Station virtual staffing as opposed to virtual assistants. But I mean, even with our internal sales team, which we have 22 agents overseas. We've got 3 US based salespeople. So, from a sales perspective, the business model that we sell to our clients is exactly how we built our business. And, back in 2019, late 2018, we're doing our call audits and doing our weekly coaching sessions and trying to develop really, quality salespeople. I mean, Wendy, 9 times out of 10, the 2 main questions were, does somebody in the Philippines speak English? And then number 2, well, how would I talk to them if they're virtual, right? And that's pre-COVID. That's before everyone's office became Zoom. Now, I kind of joke with people, in the last 3 years, we've all kind of been virtual assistants, right? Depending on where you're at in the country, it might have lasted longer, it might have been shorter. But now, COVID really expedited how business operates by 10, 15, 20 years to where, we rarely have anybody, even if they've never worked with somebody overseas or somebody offshore or even somebody outside of their own city, people understand the new, virtual workforce. So it's definitely, I think, helped people realize that at the bottom line, most of what all of us do operating our businesses every single day is either on the phone or on the computer, right? Our software is all in the cloud. Our phone systems are all voice over IP, which means there's no hard wires. It's all going to the cloud as well. So it doesn't matter if you're sitting in Denver or Dallas, where I'm at, or New York or Manila, Philippines. You can get the work done all through a simple login. And what we try to help our clients do is focus more on the systems, process, and people in order to make sure that you can leverage that talent. Because I think what a lot of people found out, especially during that initial, March to July 2020 transition, they used to be able to sit in their office and say, well, look at Sally over there. She's doing a great job. And Johnny over there, he's always here early. But that was their only metric to gauge how well their team was performing. When people go remote and you lose that safety net of seeing people in an office, whether they were actually doing good work or not, being able to see them gave you a certain trust, right? Well, what a lot of people, when they made that transition, right? Your processes, how your business operated when, everyone's working remotely and they've got kids home from school and they've got dogs in the background, right? Making sure you still have that efficient business is where a lot of people, found a lot of struggle and a lot of need to really adapt. And that's what we try to help our clients do, right? Obviously for us, we're taking jobs, positions, offsetting different tasks and taking them overseas. But it all for us comes down to the process and making sure you have a system from recruitment to training to management, and making sure that we work hand in hand with our clients to ensure that that's as easy and painless for everybody as possible.
Okay. So we've been talking about hiring virtual assistants or virtual staffing or virtual teams. The name of this podcast is Salesology: Conversations with Sales Leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. So why VAs, virtual assistants for sales?
Yeah, definitely. And I am the biggest proponent of this because with my background, rewind 4.5 years ago, I had never talked to or worked with anybody overseas in the Philippines anywhere. My only exposure to this outsourcing or this virtual assistant world was at one of the companies I work with. We outsourced our IT to India. And my only exposure to this was every time my computer went down. That was the most frustrating 3 to 4 hours of my life, right? Getting passed around and the beeping, getting disconnected, accents, you name it, right? So I kind of had, I think, probably what most people think of when you start throwing around the word outsourcing or virtual assistants. What I say, and I'll kind of give you a story here. So our team, I joined in tail end of 2018, and as we were growing and expanding, we were looking to hire, US-based salespeople, go to shows, conventions, the typical. Well, all of a sudden, there is no more conventions. There is no more shows. So at Rocket Station at the time, we were a pretty small team. We only had 5 people here in the US. We pivoted and said, well, we have, we're recruiting thousands of people in the Philippines. Why don't we try to build a sales team who's going to sell our product here in the US? Because, Zoom is the new sales office. So what we did was we actually kind of pivoted and started hiring incredible salespeople out of the Philippines to get on, like most people, Zoom calls, discovery calls, do our prospecting, qualify leads that came in through our various marketing channels. And we were able to quite literally 15x our business within 12 months navigating COVID. So the main reason that I really am an advocate for people to utilize virtual assistants in their sales teams is, number one, our customers are everywhere. And what I mean by that is we all have social media, presences. We all have social media budgets that we advertise in Meta and TikTok and all those things. We also have our lead magnets, our Google. People need to be met, where they are. And to scale that experience is very tough because really good salespeople, what do all of them suck at, Wendy?
Being organized and getting all the little detail stuff done that nobody wants to do, including me.
Exactly.
That's what we suck at. Yes.
Exactly. They suck at the details and they suck at the follow-up, right? They're good at making the first call when someone's very interested, but if that person doesn't answer the phone or they don't respond to the email, they kind of fall by the wayside because we always want to, we want to chase that 20%, right? The 80-20 rule. We want the 20%. Great salespeople like us can come in and crush. But what I tell people is think of the 80% that you're leaving behind, right? Just because maybe it's not the right time. Maybe you just missed somebody. So virtual assistants and offshore team members and how we started to leverage them were just super useful in having really an infinite touch that was scalable from a pricing standpoint to where we could, truly work our leads from beginning to end and really convert as much of that business as possible without having to hire large sales teams or without having to bring salespeople in that wouldn't stick around for very long because we weren't able to keep up with that hot, motivated lead that every top salesperson wants to have fall in their lap every day.
Yes, and I also see, many of our clients are solopreneurs. And one of the things that I see with a lot of solopreneurs is they seem to think that they have to do everything themselves. Whatever it is, they have to do it. And there are a lot of things that are just so, they need to be done, but they're really, really time consuming. Whether it's sending emails or social media or texting clients or whatever it is, things that don't even involve talking to people.
Yeah.
Research. So many of our clients spend so much time researching things, and that could so easily be done by someone else.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, for most business owners, especially if you're a solopreneur getting started, like you need to be in front of people. And whether you have a sales background and that's, you're kind of the visionary leader of the company, or even if you're an operator, right? You're an engineer, or you're a product-based person. You're right. So much of that prospecting, whether it's the social media, whether it's just building lists, doing market research, if you're like I said, we do a lot within the real estate space. So even if it's for an investor who's looking at a specific market, spending the 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours to research, all the market data and build a nice spreadsheet, like, yeah, it's important. But for you as the business owner, is that important for you to be doing? So you're right. Giving, entrepreneurs the ability to have that assistant that everybody needs, right? And it doesn't matter what job you're in. Everybody needs more time in their day. That's the great thing with all these efficiency tools, right? It's like, oh, we should be, we should be able to enjoy our lives more, and we should be able to run better teams. We just end up doing more, right? There ends up being more stuff that funnels in as more stuff gets put on our plate. So that's where virtual assistants, where they can be so impactful, because it's just an economies of scale. You can leverage somebody who has the talents of a $18, $20, $30 an hour local employee, but you can do it at a fraction of the cost without giving up any quality of work. Plus, you're now freeing up 10, 20, 30, 40 more hours of your time, whether that means you're focusing on sales, bigger picture plays for your business, just being able to think, a little bit less doing, a little bit more thinking. I think every entrepreneur would appreciate even a few hours, a week or a month, that they could just work on the business and not have to do so much in it.
Okay. So I'm going to switch gears here for a moment. My special guest is Greg Brooks, who is the Chief Growth Officer at Rocket Station. And we're going to pause for a word from our sponsor. And then when we come back, I'm going to grill Greg, because I want to know about the mistakes, the things that people should do if they're trying to hire a VA, and the things they should absolutely not do when hiring a VA, and how to make them productive. But before we get to that, we're going to pause for a word from our sponsor, which is Rocket Station. So take it away, Greg.
Thanks so much, Wendy. So if you are a business owner, team leader, manager, and you're looking to find an affordable way to grow and scale your teams, right? The word of the year is efficiency. I encourage you to check out Rocket Station Virtual Staffing. We're the number one virtual staffing provider, specifically to the real estate industry, but have over 2,200 virtual assistants working for our clients. And what we help you do is 3 steps. We help you, the entrepreneur or manager, document the systems and processes that are going to make your hires successful. We create custom SOPs, process maps, and training material to ensure when you hire that person, you can truly pass the work off confidently. We also handle all of the placement and HR headaches, and we have a full management team to help your virtual assistant onboard and hit those KPIs. And for the listeners of the Salesology podcast, if you go to discovery.rocketstation.com, we're offering a $500 off promotion if you get started with our services. So when you go to discovery.rocketstation.com, just put Salesology in the referred by box, and you'll get $500 off your first month of service.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for that, Greg. And we will put that link and the code Salesology in the show notes. So when you have finished listening to this podcast, just go to the show notes and click on the link. And I am back. We are back with Greg Brooks. So now I'm going to ask him some more questions. Greg Brooks, Chief Growth Officer of Rocket Station. I heard you say something very interesting. You were talking about SOPs, the standard operating procedures. And so many times when I speak with business owners, with entrepreneurs, and they say to me, I want to hire a salesperson. And I say, great, what do you have in place for them? And the answer is generally nothing. So could you speak to the importance of having that process in place for your team? If your team is one person or it's 100 people, why do we need to have that process in place? What does that mean?
Yeah. So we're big believers in this. We feel like it should be process before people always. And say, Wendy, working with we work with publicly traded, massive multinational companies. We work with solopreneurs that are just hiring a part-time VA. And it really doesn't matter what level or what scale you're at. We see this consistently across all of our clients that, like you said, they hire knowing they need somebody. Either they've lost a team member or there's opportunity for growth, or it's a new position, but they want to hire off of experience because there's no process in place. There's no training material. There's no implementation plan. There's no onboarding or ramp up. For most people, it's, hey, go sit beside, lead salesperson number one, or sit beside me for a couple of weeks. And there you go. Figure it out. You're off on your own, which we feel like, obviously working with virtual assistants, but really hiring anybody. That's where it's the completely wrong way to do it. And unfortunately, salespeople, sales departments, I feel like are the most guilty of this because salespeople by nature are not necessarily very process driven. I think a lot of the successful salespeople, and say I won't call myself successful, but I'll say I've done it long enough that I've had to learn the hard way that what differentiates the good versus the great in the sales world is having a process. So what we do with each of our clients is we sit down with them and we do what's called the brain dump. We say, okay, why are we hiring this position? What are we looking to offset work? For example, for a salesperson, we want to take the lead generation, the lead qualifying work off them. Are we creating a whole new position? Are we scaling multiple positions within our sales department that are going to carry quotas and close business for us? We first start with the why, to quote a good old Simon Sinek. And then from there, we start to back in, well, what is the technology? What is the scripting? What is your product offering? And we start to create these process flows for what each role is going to be responsible for. So those process flows act as, and for anybody who's not familiar, it's called process mapping. It's the basic 10,000 foot view of each role and the steps that they're going to undertake to be successful. And that could be, say, utilizing our software to prospect on LinkedIn. You're going to send X amount of messages per week. Here's some scripting and templates around how we follow up with people. Here's our link. It's those basic steps to help them do their job. And then we take it the step further and we dive into developing custom standard operating procedures with our clients. So that's the nitty gritty. That's the granular. That's what, from our experience, less than 10% of companies possess the nitty gritty SOP to where you could essentially hire somebody and hand them, let's say, a booklet, but a digital booklet. There's lots of cool platforms out there now that you can upload this stuff in and make it gamified and interactive. But you could essentially hand them a booklet and say, here's your role. Here's what I want you to do. Here's how I want you to do it. Go. And that is what, number one, allows companies to truly scale, right? That's where you guys have such laser focused process where as long as you're bringing in the right people, you're empowering them to use their skills and be clear with what you want them to do. But that's also the hardest part in setting up a process-driven sales department, ops department, accounting department, is that stuff takes real time. So we try to offset that with our clients, and we've got a team of process engineers that does that for them just through a few simple Zoom calls and taking a deep dive into what they're looking for and how they currently operate the business.
Well, I love what you're saying here. There is this very insidious myth of the born salesperson, and that, somehow there are these people out there that are they're born knowing what to do and knowing what to say. And so, what we see a lot is companies that don't set up a process because, hey, I just hired a born salesperson. And that typically doesn't work very well. So, I'm
I know
really,
salespeople were sometimes seen as like this wizard, right? With our magic wand, and we can say the magic thing, and boom, business opens up. And obviously, you and your team see it a lot. I know obviously from personal experience, like that's just not the way it is. Really good sales teams have really solid processes because it's usually not the person that says the right thing the first time, right? It's always in the follow up. So having from generating those leads, going through, proper qualifying activities, conducting really accurate sales calls, finding the product fit, and then really the follow-up, right? Getting the additional materials, getting it, staying in contact. So when the timing's right, you're the first option that they come to. And that's a lot of work, right? But it's more so a process than it is, the silky tongue salesperson that can just, whisper in your ear and the wallet opens up.
it's like a miracle. Yeah, so I'm curious uh, how you manage people that are in the Philippines or they're in another country. I mean, I think that that's something that everybody has been dealing with since COVID, whether their team members are in the Philippines or just like in the next town over. How do you manage people if someone is in the office? You can look over and go over and talk to them and, hey, what are you doing? And but if they're not in the office, how do you make sure that they're doing what you need them to be doing?
No, definitely. And I mean, unfortunately, that that warm and fuzzy picture of, Johnny's in the office, Kathy's in the office. I know she's working hard. I mean, a lot of us found out, whether it's through COVID or I feel like I talked to lots of entrepreneurs that have that experience of, well, they were actually on Facebook 7 hours of the day and they actually weren't working as hard as I thought they were. Right. So it was kind of this mystique that when we all went virtual, we started to kind of see the results. So again, for us, it all comes back down to process. For those of your listeners that have read the Traction book, right? If you don't have a number, you can't manage it. So process number one is used in the training, right? It's used to expedite the flight path. It's used to get people up to speed quicker. It gives them the resource material so that there's clarity in their scope of work. But then on the back end, once they are plugged in, we use it to model and build KPIs, performance metrics, and really run a data-driven, whether it's sales team, ops team, customer service team, whatever the case may be. So I feel like where a lot of people, don't structure it is understanding like what are the KPIs around this job, right? We're hiring this job. Well, what do I need them to do? And for an entrepreneur, we may want to hire someone who can do 50 different things, right? For a bigger company that's more departmentalized, we may need somebody who can just do 2 things and hit 2 numbers. But it's having the understanding as to like what success looks like and what those numbers are. That is like the number one kind of cultural belief that we have here at Rocket Station, is that through having a process-driven hiring experience, we're setting VAs up to know what their role is and what is expected of them. And then we analyze that performance based on those numbers that we've built with our clientele. I think a lot of people think, and sales is probably one of the guiltiest departments for this. A lot of sales managers are accidental managers, right? Where they were the top salesperson and they get moved up and now they don't necessarily have a management background. They're not exactly sure what they need to be doing. Maybe their personal goals don't necessarily align with individual team member goals, and it creates a mess, right? What we like to do is set up clear KPIs and clear metrics, whether it's on the lead generation side, whether it's prospecting, whether it's putting a quota to what they're expected, number of sales calls, dollars collected, whatever the case may be. Those numbers are what allows us to really, we have a term that we like to use, autonomous motivation, where you can give somebody the clarity in what they need to do and give them a number that they're shooting for, where it's black and white, right? Where they know what success looks like. And that's the kind of the big ethos around how we manage. I mean, we quite literally have 2,200 people spread all throughout the Philippines that all work remote from their home offices, but we drill it down to the numbers specific to their job. And that's really what becomes the performance indicator for the relationship with our clients and what we relay back to them and what we feel like our VAs really buy into, is the fact that we spend a lot of time recruiting the right people. We set them up for success within the role, and then we give them, a North Star, or we give them a very clear metric that they're being judged against. And when they're not hitting it, we step in. There's coaching. Is it a system issue? Is it a process issue? Is there something we're missing? We do kind of a top-down evaluation. And when they're exceeding or hitting goals, we celebrate it, right? But I think a lot of it comes down to using those processes to create the clarity within the metrics, within the outcomes that you need, so that you can set an expectation and then manage to that, rather than tapping them on the shoulder with a Zoom message every hour saying, hey, you there? Hey, how's it going? Hey, did you make all those calls? Like, no, you don't need to do that. And that's wasting your time, right? If you're hiring teams of VAs, you probably have more valuable work to be doing in your position or for the company than playing micromanager and doing the tap, tap, tap. Hey, saw you're on mobile on Zoom. Wanted to see if you're there. Like, no, manage it through the numbers.
Yes, manage through the numbers. So there was one question that perhaps I should have asked you earlier in our conversation, but I'm gonna ask you now. Why the Philippines? Isn't it easier if you're, given that a lot of people are working remotely anyways, so you're going to be hiring someone that's virtual, or virtual at least part of the time. But isn't it easier to hire and manage someone that is, I'm in New York City, so isn't it easier to hire someone in New York City, or in this, in New York State, or in this country, rather than the Philippines? Why should someone consider outsourcing to another country?
Definitely. I think the big thing that comes into play for a lot of people, and I think this will resonate with the entrepreneurs or the solopreneurs, is just the cost benefit, the economies of scale. The Philippines, the reason we're there is for the last 30, 35 years, really since the stabilization of the internet, the Philippines has been where companies like American Express, JP Morgan, AT&T have outsourced quite literally hundreds of thousands of jobs. So when you talk about, number one, they're the most educated third world country in the world. All of our people have college degrees. Most of them have worked for these big major financial institutions, servicing Western, US, Canada, Australia, England, these big. So work culture wise, they're very Westernized, because they've quite literally been talking and dealing with both internal structures that are similar to how our businesses are set up, but also talking and selling to potential clients and potential prospects over here. So just a cultural assimilation, it's very easy. Most of our people have, at minimum worked 4 or 5 years for some of the biggest US brands, working with US customers. And then, like I said, the economies of scale. A lot of people, when they're first jumping into virtual assistants, whether you're the solopreneur, whether you're looking to scale a department, usually cost benefit is one of the top buying features. So when you think of a very highly educated, very Westernized work economy, and you mix that with the fact that, from economies of scale, it's about a sixth as expensive to live in the Philippines as it is to live here. You get someone who's very educated, who, like I said, outperforms, definitely minimum wage employees here in the States, but sometimes even people who are on salary for a fifth or a sixth of the cost. So it allows you to, whether it's, hey, I need a cost, like kind of what we're all going through with the financial times now, whether it's a cost savings option in the immediate, or whether it's the scalability where now I can hire 3 for 1, it gives great benefit to the company, whether you're on the large side and you're trying to outsource work that's not revenue generating, that is kind of hits the bottom line, or you're an entrepreneur who can't afford an intern or a $22 an hour, New York employee. And but you can hire someone for 40 hours a week for $7, $8, $10 an hour and get the same output. So it kind of helps both sides of it, whether you're dealing with with the economies of scale, or you're just getting started and you need the help, but you can't afford somebody locally.
Okay, well, you answered my question. Thank you. So we have been talking to Greg Brooks, who is the Chief Growth Officer of Rocket Station. And before we finish, Rocket Station is also the sponsor of this podcast. So I will simply ask Greg to repeat his sponsorship offer. And we're going to post everything in the show notes. So as soon as you finish listening to the podcast, go to the show notes, click on the link. But one more time with feeling, Greg.
Yeah, definitely. So anything we've talked about, like I said, whether you're struggling with, developing a process-driven business and you want to talk to our team to kind of see how we do it, how we get it out of people's heads and conceptualize it, or maybe you've been considering outsourcing or a virtual assistant yourself and you want to learn more about that, I would encourage anybody to hop on a call with our hiring team. We'd love to walk you through a quick 20-minute consultation, see if it's the right time, if we're the right fit, but more importantly, kind of talk through the right way to hire virtual assistants based on our 8 years of experience. So head to discovery.rocketstation.com, click the link in the show notes, and anybody who books a call from this podcast, put Salesology in the referred by box, and you'll get $500 off your first month of service with a Rocket Station trained virtual assistant.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Greg. And thank you all for listening to the Salesology Conversations with Sales Leaders podcast with my special guest, Greg Brooks, Rocket Station, Chief Growth Officer of Rocket Station. And if you have found value in listening to today's podcast, then think about one business owner or one entrepreneur or one sales professional that you know that you think might also find value in listening to this podcast. And please do share the link with them. And until we meet again, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, really large bills.
You've been listening to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. Be sure to follow so that you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share it with your friends. Tune in every week for more exciting insights and wisdom on transforming sales. And until next time, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, very large bills.